During spring in the year 1940, Hitler's armies would march further north and west, and on April would take over Denmark and Norway, and in the next month would take over Holland and Belgium. Due to this, Britain would send over troops to help France. However, the French would be overpowered by the Germans and would be forced to retreat. The French would retreat to Dunkirk, a French port, and just about 6 weeks after this battle, the French would surrender on June 22nd, 1940, leaving Britain to stand alone. However, even with this in mind, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain, vowed to fight and never surrender. Then, by the late 1940s, the Battle of Britain would begin. The Germans started by bombing London and other major cities in Britain. Britain would then respond by shooting down about 2,000 planes. After a few months of this battle, Hitler would give up his plans to invade Britain. Even with this all happening, the United States would try their best to stay out of the wars happening. However, they did help the Allied powers by repealing laws that banned trade from countries in war. The United States would also help Britain by giving them 50 old American destroyers in exchange for 99-year leases on military bases in Newfoundland and the Caribbean. As more and more wars rose, the United States would make plans to prepare for a case of war. They prepared by spending more money on army and navy and military drafts, and overall improving their armies. Due to the threat of war, the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, would be forced to run for a third term of presidency, breaking the 2-year term set by the first president, George Washington. Even Roosevelt's competitor would agree for his third term. Due to all the wars occurring by the late 1940s, Britain was running out of money, and Roosevelt suggested that they lend supplies to Britain. And in March 1941, Congress in the United States would pass the Lease Act, allowing sales or loans to countries who the president deemed vital to the United States. In June 1941, Hitler would launch a surprise invasion on the Soviet Union, which at the time had a non-aggression pact. However, after this attack, this non-aggression pact would quickly disappear and the Soviet Union would join the Allied powers which they had been fighting against. Even though Roosevelt didn't totally trust Stalin, the United States would lend supplies to the Soviet Union. In the following month, Roosevelt and Churchill would issue the Atlantic Charter. The Atlantic Charter was made to set goals towards the post-war, and that both leaders wouldn't seek any land or territory from the war. As time passed, the United States would be more and more alarmed of Japanese aggression happening in Asia, so they would make an embargo with the Japanese. This embargo would quickly make the Japanese mad because they needed these resources badly. And on November 1941, Japan and American officials would meet, and the Japanese would ask the United States to lift its embargo, and the United States would respond by telling the Japanese to withdraw from China and Southeast Asia. As the conversation continued, neither side would agree on anything, and plans for an attack on the United States would start. And on December 1941, as Americans were peacefully staying at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Japanese planes would sweep and start the attack on Pearl Harbor, and in less than 2 hours, they sank about 19 American ships and destroyed about 200 planes and killed about 2,400 Americans. The reason for this attack from the Japanese was because they believed that after this attack, the United States would beg for peace. However, the United States would respond by declaring war on Japan in December 8th, 1941, and due to this, Germany and Italy would declare war on the United States. Even with this attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese would make two big mistakes that would eventually lead to their downfall. The first mistake being that they failed to fully sink American ships. And the second mistake was that the Japanese did not bomb fuel tanks in Hawaii, which would be helpful in future plans. And after this, the United States would make a draft and would train their soldiers for battle. Even women would join. Factories would quickly get to work in making materials for upcoming wars and battles. So much so that a Nazi leader once made fun of the United States by saying that they couldn't make planes. However, he'd be wrong. Farmers would also get to start growing fruits and vegetables and other foods for the war. Lots of industries would create supplies, and with all the good came the bad. Mexican Americans would also face these problems because many were recruited by American businesses and would be working in harsh conditions or would be paid under wage. Mexico would also play a part in World War II because German submarines would bomb Mexican oil ships, causing Manuel Avila Camacho, the president of Mexico, to declare war on Germany, Italy, and Japan on May 22nd, 1942, and joining the Allied powers in the League of Nations.